It's time to return to the runway once again, in the world of famous model Derek Zoolander, and explore this unique and funky comedy which acts as a satire of the fashion industry and the celebrity world in general. Released in 2001, Ben Stiller plays Zoolander, a model adored by the world thanks to his pose Blue Still. However, after getting caught in a conspiracy to commit an assassination, he must team up with rival model Hansel, played by Owen Wilson, where we are transported into a funny and bright and colourful fast-paced comedy experience, one that is honestly really like no other. The biggest question is, can Zoolander unleash his new look, Magnum, just in time to save the day? Yep, this movie is utterly ridiculous and I absolutely love it. So today we are going to explore 10 things that you didn't know about Zoolander. Now I know what you're all thinking. Why am I dressed up like a cowboy? Well, that's because after watching Zoolander, I've decided to become a male model. But I know what you're still thinking. Yes, but why are you dressed up like a cowboy? Is this some kind of weird fashion shoot? Well, that's because I'm a model now. And how else do you expect me to look? So, let's check it out. I'm a cowboy. Number 10. Zoolander started as a sketch. Before Zoolander was a cinematic sensation, his origins go back to TV, when a series of sketches featuring the dim-witted character were featured at the 1996 and 1997 VH1 Fashion Awards, where of course the world got a first glimpse of Ben Stiller as the male supermodel Derek Zoolander. It's really interesting watching some of these old sketches, as although Stiller had the character down to a T even all the way back then, in one of the sketches he has a completely different look, where you can see the character is sporting a goatee. Hey look, I guess it was the 90s. And along the way this goatee would be vetoed. The character was the creation of Porky's 2 director, Russell Bates, and writer Drake Sather, and the name Zoolander was an amalgamation which came from the names of real-life models Mark Vanderloo and Johnny Zander. Yep, these sketches may have been an early prototype, but one thing was for sure, Zoolander had arrived. Number 9. Somewhat based on a true story. Somewhat. Zoolander seems to have been a passion project for Stiller, as not only would he star in the movie as Zoolander, but he would also direct the movie, as well as co-write and co-produce it. According to IMDb, it took several scripts and rewrites till Paramount Pictures came on board to back the movie. A huge subplot of the movie is a new fashion brand called Derelict, which is basically a fashion lineup made up of street rubbish. Well, believe it or not, this wasn't too far off from the truth, as it's based on a real-life fashion line from the year 2000 by British fashion designer John Galliano, in which this line consisted of fashion created by rubbish and other items plucked from the streets of New York City. So yeah, not a parody, this was an actual real thing that happened. But let's be honest, how often are we scratching our heads with confusion over some of these fashion show designs? As you can see here with Head and Shoulders Larry and Eyeball Elaine, as well as Accordion Aaron. But none of these looks are more baffling than the please don't fart in my face look. Number 8. Casting possibilities. So of course it's a given that Stiller was going to play Zoolander. However, Stiller was going to have a dual role, as he was also going to play his manager, Murray Ballstein. But probably due to the fact that Stiller already had so much going on what with the making of the movie, the part went to Stiller's real-life father, Jerry Stiller. Stiller wrote the part of Hansel for his friend Owen Wilson, but at that stage it looked like Wilson wasn't going to be available, so other actors were considered, including Jake Gyllenhaal, who actually did audition. As it happens, Wilson was cast, and his flowing long hair that we see throughout the movie is a wig, as at that time he was filming Behind Enemy Lines, of which his hair had to be short for that part. When it comes to the movie's villain, Mugatu, Andy Dick was originally cast, but commitments to the sitcom Go Fish got in the way. So the part went to Will Ferrell, who absolutely chews up all the scenery, and you can just tell the guy is having a blast making this film. Dick did, however, end up getting a small part of that weird masseuse, who honestly looks like what you'll get if Princess Leia procreated with a potato. Mila Jovovich played the henchwoman, Katinka, and she based the character's accent and exaggerated facial expressions and mannerisms on her own mother. And of course, Ben Stiller's real wife, Christine Taylor, played love interest / journalist Matilda. Number 7. David Bowie was happy to be a part of Zoolander. Now, Zoolander has so many famous faces turning up. Like, a lot. It seems that so many big stars really wanted to be a part of Zoolander at some capacity, so there must have been a lot of buzz and hype over the script at that time. Now, some people get annoyed when I don't mention every single actor in a movie that I'm talking about, but come on! You can't expect me to list every single celebrity cameo in Zoolander. That'll just be cruel and inhumane, and it will probably take a day. However, and yes, this is a big however, the most celebrated cameo in Zoolander is without a doubt David Bowie, who randomly shows up to be judge when Zoolander and Hansel have a walk-off. Stiller wrote the part with Bowie in mind, but wasn't sure if Bowie would even want to do it. But not only did Bowie turn up to shoot the scene, it seems like he had a lot of fun doing it, as Bowie said that it was just too much of a funny script to walk past, and called the whole experience an absolute hoot. And Stiller and Bowie must have really hit it off, as Stiller called working with Bowie a highlight of his career. And famous faces aside, Zoolander also features some pretty rocking 1980s tunes, including Michael Jackson's Beat It, Wham's Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, and Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And the movie's score was put together by James Bond composer David Arnold. Number 6. Zoolander Ban. Now, Zoolander may hardly seem like a movie that'll be so controversial that it would get banned. After all, it's about a silly model. This isn't exactly Cannibal Holocaust. Well, that's exactly what happened. Zoolander was banned in Malaysia, thanks to a subplot about the Prime Minister of Malaysia being assassinated, even though it doesn't actually happen in the movie, and the movie itself is not meant to be taken seriously. But regardless, Malaysia weren't laughing and found Zoolander to be, quote, definitely unsuitable. Zoolander would also be banned in Singapore. However, the ban would eventually be lifted in 2006, 5 years after its initial release, and it was also given the equivalent of an NC-17 rating. Zoolander also had its issues in its home country, as originally in the US it was given an R rating thanks to its drugs and sexual references, but after making a few trims here and there, the movie was able to be taken down into being a PG-13. Number 5. Alternative ending. Now, we all know the famous ending to Zoolander, where Zoolander and Matilda now have an infant son who pulls off a modelling look, as well as the creation of the Derek Zoolander Centre for Kids who can't read good and who want to learn to do other stuff good too. It's a fun, happily ever after sort of ending. However, the original ending was going to be quite dark, as it would have featured Zoolander being killed when being struck by a train, where he then arrives in heaven. But this ending was scrapped, not because it was felt it was too downbeat, or because audiences probably wouldn't want to watch this guy who they've been going on an adventure with suddenly die. Nope, just simply because it was felt that it would cost too much to film this alternative ending. So had the budget been a little higher, Zoolander would be toast. Funny thing is, this isn't the only Ben Stiller movie where Stiller's character was originally meant to be killed in the end, as the movie There's Something About Mary was to end with Stiller's character getting run over by a bus. Wow, Stiller really has a bloodlust for his characters to be run down by motor vehicles, doesn't he? Number 4. Zoolander led to a court case. Yep, if Zoolander wasn't controversial enough, what with it being banned in certain locations, the chaos would continue, as Zoolander would lead to a copyright infringement court case, as American Psycho author Bret Easton Ellis felt that plagiarism may be at work, as Zoolander is very similar to a book that he wrote called Glamorama. Glamorama was published in 1998 and does have striking similarities to Zoolander, as they both revolve around a dumbass male model. In Glamorama's case, the model was called Victor Ward, who gets caught up in a terrorism conspiracy within the fashion world. And like Zoolander, Glamorama is a satire on celebrity culture and obsession. According to IMDb, legal action was taken, but an out-of-court settlement was reached. Ellis would later be quizzed about the lawsuit and the similarities between his book and Zoolander, but he couldn't discuss them due to legal issues. So could this thing have been a coincidence or something else? Well, I don't know. It's not really up to me to say, so I'll just say Goldblum Humpty Egg Burgers. Yeah, that'll do it. Number 3. A real-life tragedy affected the production. So considering that back in 2001, Zoolander was the new upcoming comedy movie, a hilarious movie not to miss, it actually couldn't have come out at a worse time, as shortly before its release, the devastating 9/11 attacks happened, which shocked the entire world. In fact, the events of what happened prompted Stiller to go back to Zoolander and digitally remove shots of the World Trade Center and several shots where they were seen in the background of the scenery. Stiller would go on to say that he did this because he felt that it was just right to do it at that time. 9/11 has also been attributed to Zoolander not having the best financial results, or at least lower than anticipated. And yeah, I guess it makes sense. Maybe at that moment in time, no one was laughing. So I guess it could be argued that this just wasn't the time to release a comedy movie, and maybe Zoolander would have fared better if its release was put off. Maybe, who knows? Heck, 9/11 loomed over Zoolander so much, once again according to IMDb, when a trailer for Zoolander was being broadcast on an American network station, it was cut off due to news coverage of the events. However, despite all this, Zoolander would go on to become a much-loved comedy classic, without being shrouded in the shadow of 9/11. And so, in 2016, when Zoolander was being released on Blu-ray, the Twin Towers were restored back into the movie. I'm not saying that when something bad happens we shouldn't turn to comedy. Heck, many people, myself included, believe that laughter is the best remedy. I guess what I'm saying is, it's complex and I don't know what the answer is. There may not even be a correct answer. Number 2. Zoolander on the Runway. Zoolander was released on September the 28th, 2001, just 2 weeks after 9/11 as mentioned. It opened up at the number 2 spot in the box office, behind the Michael Douglas thriller Don't Say a Word, and overall would go on to make nearly $61 million on a budget of $28 million. So it did recoup its budget and then some, but still was considered quite poor. It also got pretty mixed reviews from the critics. It was praised for being silly and smart at the same time, whereas I think others just didn't get the joke and saw it as a silly movie with low-grade buffoonery-style humour. Some critics were even offended by themes of child labour laws within the movie. Ebert himself referred to Zoolander as a victim of bad timing in regards to 9/11. I remember seeing Zoolander at a movie theatre for the very first time and just loving every second of it. I loved its energy, its music, its bright colours, and in general, I just really got engulfed in this movie's universe. All the music that's featured throughout the movie and its music video style of presentation it often had, to me, often made it feel almost like a musical. It also felt very fast and kinetic, and of course I loved the humour, and I appreciate how Stiller played this ridiculous larger-than-life character. It was a far cry from his usual low-key everyman who always seems to suffer bad luck. Note, here he is a fully confident man who is a high achiever and adored by the world. Not an underdog, but if anything, an overdog, who is really out of touch with reality and full of his own self-importance, but in a comical and, dare I say it, even likeable way. This almost feels like Stiller is saying to us, the audience, hey, it's okay guys, this character is meant to be ridiculous and over the top. You're all in on the joke here, so let's have some fun with it. And Zoolander is a movie that really resonates with people, and I think it's because it taps into something that we're all familiar with, celebrity culture and just how much we all adore celebrity culture, despite the fact that sometimes the celebrity world might seem out of touch with reality. Yes, Zoolander is meant to be a joke played at the expense of the fashion industry, but I would argue that it's a joke at the expense of the entertainment world in general, and how the glamour and glitz of the celebrity world can really be out of touch of the real world. Number 1. Sequels. So in later years, Zoolander would be considered a classic, where finally a sequel was released in 2016, 15 years after the original. A sequel that was called Zoolander Number 2, which is actually quite a fitting title. Sadly, this movie came out at a time when all of a sudden, there was all these sequels to older comedy movies that no one asked for. And sadly, just like those movies, Zoolander Number 2 just couldn't live up to its original. Whereas I could get into the world created in the first movie, I just couldn't get into this one. It's like all the likability was swapped over with it being obnoxious and just really juvenile and silly, but not in a fun and thought-provoking way that the original was. But hey, that's just my opinion and it's probably wrong. After all, I'm just a bald guy wearing a cowboy hat. But all said and done, the movie was a massive flop, barely recouping its budget. However, there was a third movie, an animated one called Zoolander Supermodel, and I didn't even know about this till now. Like, what's going on? Have I just entered the Twilight Zone where this movie exists? Okay, so technically this movie is a string of animated shorts that were strung together in one film, which was released on Netflix. Now, the animated shorts feature the voices of Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson, and were originally made with the intention of creating an animated Zoolander web series. But that didn't work out. And in addition to that, I can't pass comment on this animated feature, because it's just not available on Australian Netflix. But yeah, I'm probably not missing out on much, as I've literally never heard anyone talk about this. And to be honest, I'm actually really surprised there hasn't been a Zoolander musical. Regardless, there will always be that classic original, where in 2001, Ben Stiller introduced us all to a unique, quirky character in a very strange but very fun, appealing movie, giving the world a laugh at a time when it was really difficult to laugh. Yes indeed, this was the time that Stiller introduced us all to Blue Steel and Magnum, and we have never been the same since. It's a comedy, a satire, a commentary, a music video, and a cool, funky glimpse into the early 2000s pop culture. Yep, Zoolander was really a movement of its time. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I have a new modelling look called Lego Surprise. It's like this. Because that's the look I make whenever I step on a piece of Lego. See ya! Yep, Zoolander was really a movement of its time. Even Sebi agrees. Okay, Sebi doesn't agree. Wait, do you agree? He does agree. Okay. Can't make up his mind.